You're daddy's little girl, like, you were the youngest. What do you feel your parents were expecting you to become?
Like all parents, they want their children to be happy.
Are you happy?
I am happy in the sense that I have many things to be grateful for. But if I have a wish for myself, it's to be able to achieve something.
The story you're about to hear is not lighthearted. For years, the world believed that everything was closed. Names had been mentioned, legal proceedings had been completed, and the media had moved on to other topics. But silence doesn't always mean the truth has disappeared. Sometimes, it only shows that the truth is being held back, waiting for the layers of protection to crumble. From within a detention facility, Ghislaine Maxwell was said to have no allies to protect her, no reputation to preserve, and no future to bargain with. According to the sources cited, she began speaking out discreetly, without fanfare or public pronouncements, but with purpose. And among the names being whispered about, there is one that many once considered untouchable, Meghan Markle, not in her royal capacity or title, but as a character from a bygone era. Before the title, before the cameras, before the fairy tale. It was a time when accessibility mattered more than fame, when photographs were taken without anyone anticipating how sensitive they might become years later. Previously unpublished images are resurfacing. Connections that were once dismissed are being re-examined, and what was once quietly suppressed is now being recorded once again. This isn't a story of rumors. This is a story of things that can't be hidden forever. Every scandal has a point where control begins to slip, not with an official statement, but with an unintended leak. According to the sources cited, a collection of previously kept secret images has resurfaced. These images are described as disturbing, not because of their appearance, but because of the people in them, the context in which they were taken, and other individuals allegedly present at the time. For years, these images were believed to have been erased from archives, withdrawn from circulation, unlicensed, and no longer appearing in official systems. Yet now, they've resurfaced. The reason given by sources is quite clear. Too many people involved, too many overlapping connections, and too many witnesses to keep everything permanently silent. At a certain point, continued concealment became riskier than letting the records come to light. What makes these images noteworthy is not just their existence, but the effort that was once made to make them disappear. Organizations don't quietly discard material if it doesn't come with risks. And media archives don't naturally shut down content unless someone, somewhere, has decided it's better for the public not to see it. Don't leave. What's coming up has been deleted from the profile. Please subscribe to the channel and like. And now, that decision seems to have been reversed. Newly emerged photos are said to place Meghan Markle within a social context long associated with Jeffrey Epstein. An environment defined not only by location, but by a network of high-profile gatherings, private trips, and controlled access. It is at this point that the narrative begins to shift, from whispers to more concrete signs. At first glance, a photo is just a moment, a face, a room, a time, but the context is what changes the whole meaning. According to sources, these images are considered sensitive not because of their appearance, but because they confirm presence. Not coincidence, not speculation, but spatial closeness within a known social circle. They anchor a timeline, connecting individuals previously separated by well-founded denial, and, most importantly, they help explain the prolonged silence. When such images disappear, it is rarely solely a matter of fear of public opinion. Instead, sources suggest the greater concern lies in legal liability, in the possibility that these images might cause others to remember, confirm, or ultimately speak out. These same sources also indicate that whenever such material resurfaces, there are often attempts to mitigate the impact, distract, or divert attention. The strategy is not to confront directly, but to wear the public down, to let the question fade, to let attention diminish, and to let silence once again prevail. Let those images fade into oblivion long enough to seem meaningless. But time always finds a way to reverse the weight of things. When defenses crumble, when alliances fall apart, and when silence no longer benefits, the truth doesn't need to be re-proven. It just needs to be brought to light. That's why these images are important, not because they conclude or accuse, but because they raise questions. And questioning is the foundation of any serious investigation. To understand why this might happen, one needs to look at the concept of anonymity. Before Meghan Markle became a widely known name, she was said to possess a special advantage: anonymity. According to sources, during the period in question, she appeared in high society spaces without scrutiny, simply because no one was watching. She wasn't famous enough to attract attention, powerful enough to be questioned, or prominent enough to be closely watched. That very anonymity turned her anonymity into a quiet advantage. At private events, lifestyle launches, or invited-only gatherings, anonymous faces easily blended into the crowd. Names weren't remembered, faces went unnoticed. No one asked where they were from, who invited them, or how their travel expenses were arranged. Sources suggest that during this period, Meghan Markle frequently attended gatherings where intimacy mattered more than title, where introductions were discreet, and approaches were informal, leaving little trace. In those spaces, anonymity became a protective shield. This partly explains why her presence was almost undocumented at the time, why the photos were uncaptured, and why her name wasn't attached. Only later, after marriage, after her rise to prominence, after receiving global attention, did her past become sensitive, because anonymity only provides protection until it's no longer effective. And once the crown appears, every previously unnoticed step becomes part of the record, whether someone wants it or not. If anonymity is the shield, then access requires a corridor. According to sources, one of the most stable doors to high society circles during that period was Soho House, a private members-only club designed to appear unassuming, creative, and harmless, while quietly connecting influential people behind closed doors. In 2015, Meghan Markle reportedly traveled to Istanbul to attend the opening of a Soho House branch. At the time, she wasn't a household name, not a star. She was described as a social space filler, present to fill the room, attend events, and maintain the atmosphere. But these gatherings weren't random. Soho House openings attracted financiers, royal connections, Hollywood influencers, and individuals who valued discretion over fame. Invitations here were as valuable as currency. Presence meant access. According to sources, what later raised quiet questions was the scale of her travels. International trips, first-class seating, and the frequency of her travels seemed disproportionate to her acting earnings at the time. According to accounts, even some colleagues in the television industry privately questioned the funding for those trips. There were no public answers, and at the time, there wasn't a need for any. In that environment, people didn't ask how you got there, only whether you belonged there. To understand why the published images caused concern, one needs to look at what sources call Epstein's social ecosystem. This wasn't a single location, but a network of recurring encounters where familiar faces appeared over time. According to sources, Meghan Markle was in New York multiple times during periods coinciding with Jeffrey Epstein's busy social schedule, and also during times when Prince Andrew was in the city. The significance lies not in a single appearance, but in the repetition. One instance might be a coincidence. Multiple overlapping appearances suggest familiarity and acceptance. Sources suggest that during that period, she moved freely in private spaces, where introductions took place informally and discretion was considered the norm. By this point, too many people knew what had happened, to the point where it was impossible to pretend it never existed. For years, the story remained intact, not because it was true, but because it was prearranged. Images were removed, names were separated, timelines simplified. Undeniable facts were buried beneath the unproven, until the protective layer crumbled. This wasn't a single event, but a process. Obscurity created access. Access led to advancement, and advancement sought to rewrite the past. But records don't forget. Images wait. Witnesses remember. And silence only works when it no longer serves any interest. The reappearance of these images doesn't close the story. It reopens it. Not with fanfare, not with ostentation, but with something far more dangerous to power: context. When the setting shifts, the story spirals out of control, and what was once invisible becomes inevitable. This is not the end. This is the point where the record can no longer be edited. Subscribe to the channel for the next parts, and leave a comment if you find any details unclear.